Jose, stop right there.
I have given 5 years to this community.
$600, Jose, then you arrested him.
Once is a mistake, twice is suspicious. Jose Antonio Garcia allegedly did this 3 times across 5 months, and every single victim had no choice but to stand there and let it happen.
I am the one they sent into those streets.
He would have the chance to answer in court, but not tonight. Within 72 hours, the Los Angeles County District Attorney would announce 4 criminal counts. 1 felony count of misappropriation of public funds, 1 felony count of grand theft by embezzlement, 2 misdemeanor counts of petty theft, 3 traffic stops over 5 months, roughly $1,000 in alleged thefts. And in the most striking allegation of all, prosecutors say one driver was relieved of $600 from his own wallet and then arrested and booked into the county jail by the same officer who allegedly took it. What follows is the prosecution's account. Jose Antonio Garcia is presumed innocent. No plea has been entered. No verdict reached. Before we go any further, I need you to sit with one detail. A traffic stop is one of the very few moments in American life where you are required by law to hand control to a stranger with a gun and a badge. You roll down the window, you hand over your license, you let your car be searched. The whole exchange runs on a presumption. The presumption is that the officer is the honest party in the room. The allegation in this case is that the presumption itself was the tool. Drop a comment if you have ever been pulled over and felt that imbalance of power on the side of the road. And subscribe. Accountability cases like this one rarely get the coverage they deserve, and we cover one every single week. Jose Antonio Garcia was born on December 24th, 1986. A Christmas Eve baby in a Long Beach hospital, the kind of birthday that gets one wrapped gift for both occasions every year. The kind of detail family members repeat at gatherings well into adulthood. By the time he was old enough to remember anything, the Garcias were settled in the working-class neighborhoods of central Long Beach, where the 710 freeway hum carries through open windows on summer nights and the smell of the port, diesel, and salt, and shipping containers drifts inland on the wrong wind. He grew up in the long shadow of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the Long Beach Police Department. In neighborhoods like his, marked patrol units were a constant. The sound of a helicopter overhead at 2 in the morning was as common as the sound of a passing freight train. Some kids in those neighborhoods grow up wanting to avoid the police. Others grow up wanting to be the police. Garcia, by every available account, was the second kind. He was a quiet student. Not a standout athlete, not a class officer, not a problem. Teachers who would later be asked about him used the kind of language that reveals how little impression he had left. Polite, showed up, did the work. A C-plus student with a part-time job stocking shelves at a Smart and Final off Anaheim Street, then later flipping inventory at an auto parts store on Pacific Coast Highway. The kind of teenage resume that does not predict anything in particular. Not greatness, not trouble, just steadiness. After high school, he tried community college for a stretch. He took criminal justice courses at Long Beach City College, the same campus where dozens of future LAPD officers, Long Beach PD officers, and sheriff's deputies have started. He did well enough. He did not finish on the timeline the catalog suggested. There were stretches of work, stretches of school, and the rotation that so many young men in working-class Los Angeles County run through before settling on a direction. Warehouse shifts, loss prevention at a department store, a short stint in private security at a downtown office building. Then, somewhere in his late 20s, the path narrowed. He took the police officer entrance exam. He passed. He went through the background investigation, the polygraph, the psychological screening, the physical agility test. He filled out the paperwork and submitted to the questions and waited. In January 2020, Jose Antonio Garcia was sworn in by the West Covina Police Department. He was 33 years old. He had a Long Beach apartment, a steady job offer in hand, a used pickup truck, and a starting patrol officer's badge with a number stamped into it. By any reasonable measure, he had finally arrived at the thing he had been pointing at since he was old enough to know what a patrol car was. West Covina sits about 35 miles east of Long Beach, deep in the San Gabriel Valley. Working class and middle class neighborhoods, big stretches of strip mall commerce along Garcia Avenue and Azusa Avenue, a long-standing Latino majority population, and a police department of roughly 100 sworn officers. It is the kind of mid-sized California city where patrol work looks the same shift after shift. Traffic stops, domestic disturbances, shoplifting calls at the Plaza West Covina Mall, welfare checks, the everyday unromantic substance of municipal policing. Garcia's evaluations from his early years on the department placed him, by all public indications of his employment status, in the middle of the pack. A solid hire, reliable on calls, quick to volunteer for traffic enforcement details. The kind of officer who, by the reports of his peers and the assignments he picked up, liked the street more than the desk. He worked the kind of overtime that a young officer with no kids and a working-class budget tends to work. He showed up for community events. He posed for the photograph at the safety day. He kept his uniform pressed. That is the picture of him that the public record offers at the moment the district attorney's filing begins. A 33-year-old officer in his fourth year on the job. A working patrol cop in a working California city. The kind of officer that, on any given Tuesday night, you would see at the end of your driveway with a flashlight and a citation book. To understand the allegations in this case, you have to understand the traffic stop, not the version on television, the real one. A patrol officer in California, working a city like West Covina, conducts somewhere between 50 and 200 traffic stops a month, depending on assignment. Most are over in under 15 minutes. Driver pulls to the right, hands trembling on the wheel, or perfectly steady on the wheel depending on the person. Officer approaches from the passenger side or the driver's side, depending on training and conditions. License and registration. Reason for the stop. A return to the cruiser to run the driver's information through the in-car computer. A decision, citation, warning, arrest. Back to the window, back to the road. Inside that 15-minute window, the legal authority that a sworn officer holds is enormous. Under California law, an officer who develops probable cause can order occupants out of the vehicle, conduct a pat-down for weapons, search containers within the passenger compartment if reasonable suspicion exists, and seize evidence in plain view. With consent, the officer can search the whole car. Wallets on the center console, backpacks on the passenger floor, purses tucked under seats, cash in the cup holder. And here is the part of the system that matters most for this case. A driver pulled over on Garcia Avenue at 1 a.m, who watches an officer walk around to the passenger side of their car with a flashlight, has almost no real ability to monitor what that officer is doing. The flashlight beam moves. The officer leans into the vehicle. The driver, sitting in the driver's seat with their hands on the wheel, because they have been told to keep them there, sees a silhouette and a beam and the back of a uniform. Body cameras exist to fill that gap. The West Covina Police Department has issued body-worn cameras to its patrol officers, and policy requires activation during enforcement contacts. The footage is supposed to be the record. The footage is supposed to be the check. But body cameras have limits. A camera mounted on the chest does not always see what the hands are doing inside a backpack on the floorboard. A camera angle can be obstructed by a leaning torso, by a flashlight held wrong, by the body of the officer between the lens and the object being searched. And until someone has a reason to pull the footage, no one watches it. A patrol officer's body camera generates hours and hours of recorded shifts every week. Most of those hours are never reviewed by anyone. The footage exists, but it sits. The trust placed in a patrol officer at a roadside stop is total. The driver hands over their license. The driver hands over their consent, sometimes explicitly, sometimes by silence. The driver hands over the contents of their vehicle to a stranger with a gun and the legal authority to take them to jail. That arrangement only works one way, It only works if the officer is honest. The allegation in this case is that, on at least 3 nights, that arrangement was not honest. The district attorney's filing describes 3 separate stops. They span roughly 5 months, from late summer of 2024 into early 2025. The first is the one prosecutors describe in the most striking detail. On the night of September 21st, 2024, according to the filing, Officer Garcia conducted a traffic stop in the city of West Covina. The driver pulled to the side of the road. The officer approached. He spoke with the driver. He developed a basis to search the vehicle, standard sequence by the public account. In the course of that search, prosecutors allege Garcia handled the driver's wallet. Inside the wallet was cash. The filing says approximately $600. The allegation is that Garcia removed that money from the wallet. Then, at the conclusion of the stop, the same officer placed the same man under arrest and transported him to be booked into the county jail system. Sit with that sequence for a second, because it is the part of the case that prosecutors have been most direct about. The same officer who, according to the filing, took the $600 from the wallet was the officer who put handcuffs on the man whose wallet had just been emptied. The same officer wrote the arrest report. The same officer's body camera and dashboard camera, in theory, recorded the encounter. And the same man whose money had allegedly just gone missing was now sitting in a holding cell, where any complaint he made about a missing $600 would carry a particular kind of credibility problem. That is the allegation. It has not been proven. Garcia is presumed innocent. The second stop the district attorney describes happened roughly 2 months later, November 23, 2024, the day before Thanksgiving in the United States, on California freeways and surface streets thick with holiday traffic. According to the filing, Garcia stopped a vehicle in West Covina during the course of his patrol shift. The car had occupants in the front and back. Whatever the stated reason for the stop, the prosecution alleges that during the encounter, Garcia accessed a backpack belonging to one of the passengers. Inside the backpack was approximately $100 in cash. The filing alleges he took it. This time, according to the public account, no arrest was made. The occupants of the vehicle were released with a verbal warning, no citation, no booking, just a stop on a holiday eve evening that ended with the car driving away, and allegedly a backpack lighter than it had been 10 minutes earlier. The contrast with the first stop is part of what prosecutors say they are presenting. In the first encounter, the driver who allegedly lost the most money was the one taken to jail. In the second, the people who allegedly lost the smaller amount were the ones quietly released. Both patterns, in the prosecution's framing, share a single logic. Whichever outcome made the loss harder to report became the outcome that night. The third stop in the public filing is dated February 8, 2025, roughly 11 weeks after the second. On that night, again in West Covina, prosecutors allege Garcia conducted another traffic stop. During the encounter, the filing says, he took approximately $300 from the vehicle's center console. The center console, not a wallet zipped into a back pocket, not a backpack stowed on a floorboard. The cup holder and armrest space that sits 2 feet from the driver's right hand. Cash visible enough, allegedly, to be reached and removed during a search. That is the public count. 3 stops. September, November, February. $600, $100, $300. A total of approximately $1,000 in alleged thefts across roughly 5 months of patrol work. The amounts are small. That is part of what makes the allegations unsettling. $1,000 across 3 stops is not the kind of theft that funds a second life. It is the kind of theft, if proven, that suggests something about the pattern itself. The dollar amount is not the wound. The wound is the structure. The wound is the arrangement. The wound is what a traffic stop is supposed to be in a country where one is required, by law, to submit to it. The public record does not say what made the West Covina Police Department open the file on Officer Garcia. The district attorney's announcement of the charges and the contemporaneous local news coverage did not specify the precise trigger. That itself is normal in pending criminal cases. Prosecutors do not, as a rule, advertise the route by which an investigation began. Sources of information are kept off the record to protect informants, to preserve the integrity of ongoing investigations, and to ensure that whatever the case is finally tested on, it is tested on evidence rather than on the way the evidence first surfaced. What the public record does tell us is the shape of the response. Garcia was placed on paid administrative leave by the West Covina Police Department pending the investigation. That detail came from a department lieutenant who spoke to local media. Paid administrative leave in California law enforcement is the standard interim status for an officer who is under serious investigation but has not been criminally charged. It removes the officer from the street. It freezes their patrol authority. It preserves the option, on the agency's part, of separation, reinstatement, or termination, depending on what the investigation concludes. That status alone does not tell you the catalyst, but it tells you the agency took the question seriously enough to take the officer off the road. In a case of this shape, there are a finite number of paths an investigation typically opens by. A driver or a passenger makes a complaint to the agency or to a watchdog body. A supervisor flags an inconsistency between an arrest report and a body camera review. An internal audit catches a pattern in cash-related stops. A confidential informant or a fellow officer raises a concern through internal channels, or, in some cases, a piece of seemingly unrelated information surfaces that prompts a closer look at footage already on a server somewhere. What we know for certain is what came out the other side. The Justice System Integrity Division of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office took the case. That division exists, by name, to handle allegations of criminal misconduct by public officials, with sworn law enforcement officers being one of its primary subject pools. The assignment of a case to that division is a signal in itself. It indicates a prosecution that the office has chosen to handle with its specialized public corruption posture, rather than treating the matter as an ordinary theft file in a general crimes unit. Deputy District Attorney Brandy Chase was assigned as the prosecutor of record. The filing was made under case number 25 WCCF 01222 in the West Covina Courthouse. The arraignment was scheduled for January 28th in Department 4. A promise to appear was accepted in lieu of bail, and on the day the charges were announced, the Los Angeles County District Attorney went to a microphone and described the allegations in the language of public trust prosecution, not as a personnel matter, as a betrayal of the badge. We are about to get into the courthouse. Before we do, two things. If you have made it this far into a case that the cable networks did not pick up, you already understand why this channel exists. We cover the cases that get a single local news clip and then disappear. The ones that turn on a single allegation in a single filing. The ones that quietly define what we mean by trust in public office. Subscribe if you want more of that. Drop a comment if you think the contrast between the first stop and the other two is as striking as prosecutors are presenting it. We will be here next week with another one. What the district attorney's filing in case 25WCCF 01222 lays out is a small case in dollar value and a serious one in framing. The charges, as filed, are 4. The first is a felony count of misappropriation of public funds under California Penal Code, Section 424, the statute that criminalizes the misuse of money or property by a public officer who has it in their custody by virtue of office. The second is a felony count of grand theft by embezzlement under Sections 487 and 503, the law that applies when a person entrusted with property fraudulently appropriates it for their own use. The third and fourth are misdemeanor counts of petty theft. The combination is unusual but coherent. Misappropriation of public funds, on its face, is a charge built for officials handling government money. Its application here, prosecutors are signaling, treats the cash a patrol officer handles during a search of a citizen's vehicle as a category of property entrusted to him in his official role. The grand theft by embezzlement count attaches to the larger of the alleged thefts. The two petty theft counts attach to the smaller alleged amounts. The district attorney's office, in its public announcement, did not detail the corroborating evidence underlying the filing. Pending criminal cases routinely hold those details back until they are presented in court. What public statements do indicate is that the case rests, at least in part, on documentary review. 3 dates, 3 stops, 3 sets of records, patrol logs, computer-aided dispatch entries, booking records on the September arrest, body-worn camera files for each of the encounters, cruiser dashboard camera files, the internal records that the West Covina Police Department generates for every traffic enforcement contact. Whatever happened during those 3 nights, in other words, was happening on camera. The body-worn camera policy of the West Covina Police Department, like the policies of every major California municipal department, requires activation during enforcement contacts. The cameras were on, by policy, on September 21st, on November 23rd, and on February 8th. The footage exists. A prosecution of this kind, when it reaches trial, typically turns on the cross-referencing of those records. The position of the officer's hands relative to the wallet, the backpack, the center console. The audible content of the conversation on the camera microphone. The arrest reports stated probable cause set against what the camera actually shows. The booking inventory of what the arrested driver had in his possession at intake set against the cash that his wallet was alleged to have contained at the start of the stop. These are the threads the district attorney's office will, presumably, present in Department 4. None of it is proof yet. All of it is to be tested. In a public corruption case against a sworn officer, the moment of confrontation is rarely the cinematic one. There is no door kicked in. There is no shouted command. There is, instead, a moment in an office, or a conference room, or a department parking lot, where a supervisor or an investigator tells a sworn officer that he is the subject of a criminal investigation, that his badge and his weapon are being collected, and that he is going home on administrative leave until further notice. The exact details of Garcia's removal from active patrol have not been publicly reported. What is on the record is the West Covina Police Department lieutenant's statement that he was placed on paid administrative leave pending the investigation. That status, by departmental and California law enforcement standard practice, would have begun with an interview, a notice, or both. Badge, sidearm, patrol car keys, and station access card would have been surrendered. A separate criminal investigation, distinct from any internal administrative review, would have continued in the background. When the district attorney's filing was finally made, Garcia was not booked through a sheriff's intake the way a stranger off the street is booked. He was given a court date. The case was filed. He was permitted to remain at liberty on a written promise to appear at his arraignment on January 28th in Department 4 of the West Covina Courthouse. That is the procedural face of the confrontation in a case like this. No body cam scene at a curb, no cuffs in a driveway, a document filed, a court date set. A career-long sworn officer summoned to answer to 4 counts in the same court system where he had, until recently, been the one bringing other people in. That is where the case stands. He is presumed innocent. The matter is set for arraignment. There is no sentencing in this story. Not yet. Possibly not at all, depending on what a jury or a judge ultimately concludes. The arraignment had not produced a plea or a verdict at the most recent public reporting available. There is no number of months to recite, no facility to name, no release year to project. What there is instead is the statutory exposure that the district attorney's office has publicly described. If convicted as charged, prosecutors say, Garcia faces up to 4 years in California state prison, plus an additional consecutive 1-year term in county jail. That is not a sentence. That is the ceiling the law allows for the combination of counts that has been filed. Whether any of it is imposed will depend on a process that has barely begun. What there also is, even at this early stage, is the language the case has already entered into the public record. District Attorney Nathan J. Hockman, announcing the charges, described the conduct alleged as a betrayal of the badge. The framing was deliberate. Turning routine traffic stops into opportunities for theft, the district attorney said, corrodes the kind of public trust that the entire functioning of the justice system rests on. He noted that the alleged thefts, while small in dollar value, struck at something larger than dollars. He used the language of integrity, and he used it on purpose. West Covina Police Chief Antonio Cortina spoke separately. He said that while the department fully supports the due process rights of any accused, including its own personnel, criminal conduct by an officer involving theft or abuse of public trust is, in his words, unacceptable. The chief did not prejudge the outcome. He noted that the matter would be decided in court, but he did not soften the description of what would be done if the allegations were proven. Both statements landed in a fixed place. They acknowledged the presumption of innocence. They also acknowledged what the allegations, if true, would mean. For the unnamed alleged victims, the public record offers no resolution. The driver, allegedly relieved of $600 in his wallet and then booked into county jail, is not identified by name. The passenger whose backpack allegedly lost $100 is not identified by name. The owner of the center console that allegedly lost $300 is not identified by name. They are described in the filing as drivers and passengers of vehicles stopped on 3 specific nights in West Covina. Whatever recovery they receive, if any, depends entirely on what the court does next. What this case rests on, in the end, is the same thing every traffic stop rests on: trust. The trust placed in a uniform, in a badge, in a sworn officer to use the enormous authority of a roadside encounter the way it is meant to be used. The trust that, when a flashlight beam disappears into a backpack on the floorboard, the hand following the beam is honest. The district attorney has alleged that, on 3 nights in West Covina, it was not. That allegation is now in the hands of the court. This case was disturbing in a way the dollar figure does not capture, but the case on the right-hand side of your screen is on a scale this one only hints at. Click it now.